If you have been dealing with any kind of wrist pain or discomfort with exercises such as push-ups, handstands, or everyday activities, then this might have nothing to do with the actual flexibility of your wrist, but rather it might have to do with some of the mechanics of your wrist. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple of exercises you could test and try out to see if you can make any meaningful improvements to your current range of motion. But more importantly, these exercises will also help you to create more capacity inside of your wrist so that you can do more exercises with less pain. So for the wrist extension assessment, what you want to do is you simply want to get on the floor and you want to start by leaning most of your body weight back into your heels. You want to put your hands out in front of you. And then from here, what you're going to do is you're simply going to keep your arms fully extended and start leaning your shoulder forward. And what you want to do is you want to check if you can find a stretch on the inside of the forearm or towards the wrist. What we want to watch out for or look for as well are whether we are getting any kind of a blocking sensation on the front side of the wrist or that the fingers are starting to curl up while we're doing the assessment. If the fingers are starting to curl up, that might mean we have some kind of tightness inside of the finger flexors, which could also inhibit the optimal function of your wrist. So that might be something we want to look into. Another thing we want to look for sure is that blocking sensation on the front side of the wrist. If you get some kind of a blocking sensation in the front side of the wrist, the following exercises should be exercises you should try and then retest this assessment to see if you can go into a deeper range of motion without getting the same blocking sensation. So for the first exercise, you simply want to get seated in a seated position onto the floor. You want to put your wrists out in front of you. And then what you're going to do from here is you're going to go back into the testing position and you're going to start leaning into the wrist up until a point where you either start getting a stretch on the inside of the wrist or you get some kind of a blocking sensation on the front side of the wrist, or the fingers start curling up in order for you to get further down into the position. So in the first case, when we have a stretch, we can just start from that position. If you start getting some kind of a blocking sensation, let's say I have a wrist blocking sensation in this position or my fingers start curling up, what I want to do is I want to go back about 15 to 20 degrees up until the point that I no longer feel that blocking sensation. And then I'm going to work from that position. So what I'm going to do from this position is I'm going to start with a Pails contraction. So I'm going to start by clamping the floor and I'm essentially trying to push myself off with my wrist, but I don't have the strength to do so. So I'm going to try to grab the floor. I'm going to try to extend my wrist into the floor, which I'm not able to. And I'm going to maintain that tension for about 30 seconds. So right now I have a lot of tension on the inside of my forearm and no blocking sensation on the front side. If you get a blocking sensation on the front side, again, you're too far forward. You should lean back a little bit more. And then once those 30 seconds have passed, you're going to start extending the fingers upwards. So I'm going to imagine that my fingers are in a digital scale and I'm going to try to lift my fingers off the digital scale. If you can't lift them off the scale, that's completely fine. You're just going to try to imagine that you're trying to put as little force onto the scale as you possibly can. So I can slightly lift off my fingers from this position, but if I were further down here, I can't lift them off anymore, but the intention of the exercise stays the exact same. I'm just trying to put as little weight onto the floor with my fingers as I can, and I'm trying to bring my wrist into this position. So in this position, I should have tension on the front side of the forearm and top side of the wrist, and maybe some stretch on the inside of the wrist. And then after 30 seconds, what you can do is you can go back onto your heels and you can retest this position to see if you've gained any kind of range of motion. Now for the second exercise, if you're very limited in wrist flexion, you can do the same thing as the first exercise, but I'm going to do it onto my wrist with my palms facing up. Ideally, with this one, you want to not start by leaning your full body weight onto your wrist because your wrist might not tolerate that position yet. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to start from seated back and I'm going to start leaning over slightly. So I'm going to put an amount of weight on my wrist that they can currently tolerate. And then once again, I'm going to do the same contraction. So I'm going to start with a Pails contraction which is going to be the opposite now. So I'm going to try to extend. So I'm trying to do this motion into the floor. So I'm trying to extend my fingers and my wrist into the floor. So right now I'm getting tension on the outside of the forearm and potentially a little bit of tension on the inside, but mostly tension on the outside of the forearm and the forearm extensors. After 30 seconds, I'm going to imagine that my hand is on a digital scale again, and I'm going to try to lift my fingers off the other way. So I'm going to try to lift my hand off the floor towards my chest, which I can slightly do in this position. So right now, I'm trying to go this way. And what I feel right now, or should be feeling right now, is tension on the inside of the forearm and the wrist, and potentially some stretch on the outside of the wrist. If you can't lift them off from this position, if you can't lift the fingers off the floor, that is not a problem. You will once again imagine that you're on a digital scale and you're trying to put as little weight on the scale as you possibly can by trying to lift your fingers up. Also in this position, make sure you're not getting any kind of a pinching sensation. If you are, you might be too far into the position. And you also want to make sure that you don't start bending at the wrist to make the exercise easier, and you keep your arms fully extended the whole time. After this exercise, you can once again do the first initial test and see if you've gained any kinds of range of motion. Now for the third exercise, this is an extra optional one. This is mainly used for strengthening the wrist, but can also be used in the case that you have a lot of tightness in the finger flexors. So if you were going forward on the initial test and your fingers were curling up as you were going forward, this might be an exercise you want to try out to see if you get any meaningful improvements. So it's a very simple exercise. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put my wrist on something supported. In this case, I'm just using my own leg, but this could also be done on a bench or something else for a base of support. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to roll the dumbbell down into my fingertips and extend my wrist this way as much as I can until I get a slight stretching sensation on the top side of the wrist. And then I'm going to slowly curl it back up as far as I can. From there, I'm going to go down again slowly, roll it down into my fingertips, try to find a stretch on the front side of my forearm, then try to extend up all the way. Potentially here at the end, I'm also getting a slight stretch on the bottom side. So you'd want to usually do this exercise for about 10 to 20 reps. So I would generally aim for 20, go for very high repetitions. So don't start with too heavy of a weight, rather start a bit too light, but just enough so that you can feel tension and a stretching sensation while doing the exercise. And you can build up this exercise over time. Now, obviously, we can also do this for the other side of the wrist. So we could just turn the wrist to the other side. In this case, we would keep a fist position the whole time. So I'm going to extend the wrist downwards here as well. I'm going to flex the wrist in this case. I'm going to let it go down. And then from here, I'm going to flex it up again. I'm going to extend it to the point where I can control it. And then slowly go back down again. And also, same thing as the first exercise, you're going to want to do this exercise from anywhere from 10 to 20 reps, no less. So rather start off a bit lighter than too heavy, and make sure you can control the range of motion. Don't try to do them super fast. Try to control them all the way so you can always find a stretching sensation inside of the wrist. Now, after completing these exercises, you want to retest the assessment again to see if you've made any meaningful improvements.